Yusuf flatlined, and in those suspended seconds, his spirit lifted. He hovered above his body, watching nurses scramble, shouting codes, pumping his chest. But he was calm, detached from pain. For a man who had always believed death was simply a gateway to God, this should have been a peaceful passage. But what came next wasn't what he expected. He didn't meet Allah. He didn't see paradise. Instead, Yusuf found himself standing at the edge of a mystery that would unravel everything he had ever preached. And in that moment, unseen by man but fully known by heaven, his true journey had only just begun. He should have felt peace. But what Yusuf saw as he floated above his lifeless body wasn't peace, it was something deeper, something heavier. The sterile lights of the hospital faded. In their place, a vast space opened around him, thick with silence and trembling with unseen power. Then he saw it, a throne, high and overwhelming, glowing with a light not of this world. And beside it, a figure in chains, a face he recognized instantly, the Prophet Muhammad. But his eyes were filled with sorrow, and his wrists were bound. Yusuf's heart stilled. Before he could cry out, a voice ancient and vast shook the air around him. Yusuf, it is time you knew the truth. Then came the question. Simple, earth-shattering. Who is God, truly? And just like that, the world around him changed. Pages of the Quran unfolded midair, flipping on their own like touched by unseen fingers. Images appeared. Desert rituals, smoke rising from incense, the Kaaba surrounded not by Muslims, but by idols. Names Yusuf had read in passing now pulsed with strange familiarity. Al-Lat, Al-Uzza, and among them, Allah, one God among many. Yusuf staggered, though his feet weren't on the ground. His chest tightened not with fear, but with revelation. His whole life, he had taught others the truth. He had counseled, corrected, and led. But now, staring into the ancient past, one thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. Had I ever truly asked? Had I built my life on a faith I never examined? The voice returned, not in anger, but in sadness. You followed what was passed down, but never questioned where it began. And in that moment, the imam, the teacher, became the student. His soul was no longer standing on solid ground. It was trembling before the unknown. Yusuf came back to life, but he wasn't truly living. The doctors called it a miracle. He had flatlined and returned. But what stirred inside his soul was no celebration. It was confusion, trembling, grief. And for the first time in over 4 decades, he stood behind the pulpit of his mosque and said nothing. He stopped leading prayers, stopped answering calls. The community murmured, some out of concern, others out of suspicion. But Yusuf didn't know how to explain that everything he once believed now felt like sand slipping through his fingers. He began reading in secret. Not just the Quran, but ancient scrolls, historical records, archaeological studies, writings that would have once made him flinch. He looked into the early Semitic tribes, the roots of monotheism, the transition from polytheistic rituals into the singular worship of one God. He searched not to rebel, but to understand. Each page was a crack in the foundation of the life he had built. He spent hours in his backyard garden, the only place quiet enough to match the storm inside him. The scent of roses reminded him of his wife Fatima's gentle faith, and the jasmine brought back memories of Baghdad, where he first learned to recite the Quran from his grandfather's trembling hands. But now, even those memories carried weight. He remembered the question he once brushed aside. Why does God allow suffering? Why do women have fewer rights? What if we're wrong? Back then, he offered polished answers. But now, those same questions echoed inside him, like thunder in a hollow chamber. The cancer still surged in his body, but it was no longer the illness that terrified him most. What shook him was the possibility that his entire life had been built on answers he never dared to question. And so, in the quiet of each long night, Yusuf didn't pray the same prayers. He asked a new one. God, whoever you truly are, show me. The hospital chapel was small. Just a few wooden pews, soft light filtering through a stained glass window, and silence so deep it seemed to breathe. Yusuf wasn't looking for anyone that morning. He only wanted a moment alone, a space to sit with the questions that wouldn't let him go. But when he stepped inside, he wasn't alone. A man stood near the altar, dressed in a simple white robe, holding a Bible. Father John. He didn't approach with sermons or urgency, just a quiet nod, an invitation. Yusuf sat, hands trembling, and before he could stop himself, the words spilled out everything he had seen. The throne, the chained prophet, the voice that had shattered his certainty. He spoke of fear, of confusion, of the ache that now lived where his faith used to be. Father John listened without interrupting. Then, gently, he opened the Bible and read one verse aloud. I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. John 14:6. The words didn't just land in Yusuf's ears. They struck his soul. Jesus? He hadn't been part of the vision, but now, it was like his name echoed in every corner of Yusuf's doubt. That night, Yusuf couldn't sleep. He lay awake, hearing that verse over and over, like a song only his spirit could hear. Days passed, and then one morning, Yusuf stepped into Father John's church. The air was warm, the walls were bare, but the presence was undeniable. He didn't come with theology. He didn't come with an argument. He came with a simple request. I want to know the truth. And as the water of baptism was poured over his head, the tears came too. Not of grief, but of release. The fear, the guilt, the crushing weight of being the one who always knew fell away. He wasn't an imam anymore. He was just a man reborn in grace. The mornings feel different now. Not because the pain is gone, though it is. Not because the cancer vanished, though the doctors still shake their heads, calling it unexplainable. No, the difference isn't in Yusuf's body. It's in his soul. For the first time in his life, he wakes up with peace, and not the kind you force with discipline or defend with doctrine, but the kind that settles into your chest like sunlight after a long, bitter storm. He still remembers the old life, the mosque, the prayers, the faces that once looked to him for answers. But now, when he opens his Bible each morning, it's not out of duty. It's out of hunger. He reads slowly, reverently, letting the words of Jesus wash over wounds too deep for medicine. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. That verse 8 doesn't just anchor him, it defines him. Not as an imam, not as a scholar, not even as a cancer survivor, but as a man who was once lost and now found. Yusuf no longer wears titles. He no longer strives to prove his worth. He simply lives grateful, humbled, and free. And when people ask him why the change, why the joy, why the light in his eyes, she smiles gently. Then he tells his story. Not to argue, not to convince, but to offer one simple truth. There's more than rituals, more than roles, more than fear, more than rules. There is a love that reaches past every wall we've built, and his name is Jesus.